Hello, welcome to From the South. I'm Laura Prada from the Telesur Studios in Caracas, Venezuela. We begin with our news. You stay with us. In Venezuela, where authorities have strongly condemned an executive order signed by U.S. President Donald Trump to freeze all Venezuelan government's assets inside United States territory. The order also prohibits U.S. citizens and entities from doing business with the Venezuelan government effective immediately. Vice President Delcy Rodriguez said that this latest attack affects all citizens.
This is a massive violation of Venezuelans' human rights. This so-called total blockade does not discriminate on who will be affected. This illegal, illegitimate, criminal blockade. This new attack seeks to satisfy a very small and extremist political wing that has yet to learn that the only way forward is democracy and respect for the Bolivarian constitution.
And in Venezuela, the Foreign Minister, Jorge Arreaza, also spoke on a press brief this Tuesday, and he was saying that the U.S. sanctions are used in cooperation with the Venezuelan opposition, and they serve as an attempt to sabotage the ongoing talks which are being held in Barbados, mediated by Norway.
They are ambushing, attempting to implode the dialogue process which is being held. President Nicolás Maduro just yesterday ratified, and it is in a communique which was published this morning, that nothing and no one, not 1,000 Trumps, not 500 Boltons, nor 400 Pences, nor 300 Pompeos or Marco Rubios or Abrams or Guaidos, will succeed in getting us to walk away from the dialogue table, which we are attending in good faith, with concrete proposals, in order to achieve a permanent dialogue and political agreements with the Venezuelan opposition to guarantee peace and stability in the country.
Arreaza also stressed the effects of the sanctions on the procurement of medicines, health needs for Venezuelans, calling the supposed protection for medicine under Trump's order a lie.
It says here that the sale and procurement of medicine is protected. That's a lie. Because how do you buy things? If you need a medication and you go to a pharmacy, and let's say Barrio Adentro, which gives it to you free of cost, if you go to a pharmacy in the capitalist world to buy a medicine, you have to pay. You either pay with cash or with a credit card, a debit card to pay. Venezuela doesn't have access to those, nor to electronic forms of payment, or to transfers. We are unable to use the financial mechanisms of the international banking system. It's part of the blockade.
And Venezuela's representative to the United Nations, Samuel Moncada, also responded to the latest threats and new U.S. sanctions imposed on the Bolivarian Republic, condemning the illegality of Washington's actions at the UN's office in New York.
Today, we are sending letters, two letters, one to the Security Council and one to the Secretary General of the UN. In those letters, we relate the series of aggressive and hostile actions of the United States government, particularly President Trump's administration, against Venezuela, and very serious and dangerous in severity and gravity. First, President Trump last Friday threatened Venezuela with a naval blockade and with a quarantine. These extreme, extraordinary actions are established in Article 41 of the UN Charter only if are authorized by the Security Council, only. And they are authorized by the Security Council only if there are threats to peace, breaking of the peace, or a clear case of aggression. We have none of these cases. We have no authorization of the Security Council. We have no evidence of Venezuela breaking the peace or threatening the peace or even attacking anyone. But without these requirements, the United States, without any regard for international law, is threatening with a quarantine and a naval blockade against Venezuela, threatening with fabricating a famine in a Latin American country just for the purpose of imposing its imperial interests.
And reactions has not waited to be. The president of Cuba, Miguel Díaz-Canel, was quick to publicly respond on Twitter to the new aggression, saying that this new move comes as United States government acts in a cowardly manner in blocking Venezuelan assets, calling it a robbery and brutal cruelty which should not be allowed. Díaz-Canel also sent his solidarity to President Maduro and the Chavista people. And we move on from information. Demonstrators in Guatemala have started a national strike by blocking roads in 26 strategic points across the country in order to protest against electoral fraud. The strike, led by the Codeca Campesino organization, also demands an end to the murder of human rights and land farmers and land defenders. The demonstrators have also condemned United States' violation of Guatemalan sovereignty through the Third Estate Safe Country agreement signed with the government of President Jimmy Morales. Guatemala is facing the second round of elections this Sunday. And Argentina goes to the polls this Sunday. Also, there is elections. The first obligatory primary elections known as PASO. The vote is seen as a dress rehearsal for the general elections that will be taking place in October. Two main forces are contending for support in what promises to be a highly polarized contest. On the one hand, the current right-wing president, Mauricio Macri, is looking for re-election alongside his running mate, Miguel Ángel Pichetto. Facing them, the former president, Cristina Fernández, who is running for the post of vice president, with Alberto Fernández, who is running for presidential candidate.
We have been measuring the difference between the Fernández ticket and that of Macri Pichetto. There is a marked polarization between these two forces. Together they account for about 80% of voter intentions, which is no small thing. But there is also a gap between the two, with Fernández on a bit over 40% and Macri's ticket on 34% in the most recent polls.
Time for a first break. Remember to follow us on Twitter at Telesur English and on my account at Laura P. Telesur. You stay with us. We are back with our news and we go to Africa because in South Africa everything is set to commemorate National Women's Day this week. The event is scheduled to take place on the 9th of August and is a public holiday celebrated annually to commemorate a 1956 woman march to petition against restrictive apartheid passed law. The country then required indigenous South Africans to carry an internal passport known as a pass for them to move around the country. This was abolished after the fall of the apartheid in 1994.
Come all to Vryburg, Ruth Sokumutsi Mambati district in Northwest to celebrate your day. the National Women's Day of South Africa 2019. Our president will be the main speaker, and there will be a lot going on there.
And Mozambique's government and former rebel group Remano have finally signed a peace deal agreed last week aimed at ending years of armed conflict. The deal was signed by President Philippe Nyusi and Renamo leader Osofo Momade in Maputo Space Square and witnessed by other regional and continental leaders, including Presidents Cyril Ramaphosa from South Africa and Paul Kagame of Rwanda. Renamo, founded as an anti-communist guerrilla group, unleashed a civil war against the leftist Frelimo government shortly after independence from Portugal in 1975. Uganda has launched the largest ever trial of the experimental Ebola vaccine. This trial at the experimental Johnson & Johnson vaccine involves up to 800 people in southwest Uganda, most of them being healthcare professionals, ambulance drivers, and burial teams. An Ebola outbreak across the border in neighboring Democratic Republic of the Congo has killed over 1,800 people. Critics said the development of the vaccine was rushed. Ugandan Health Minister Oli Ilunda resigned in July in protest of the vaccine trials. And we continue talking about the Democratic Republic of the Congo, because the health ministers of Congo and Rwanda, they've made to find ways of controlling the Ebola virus. Rwandan Minister of Health Diane Gashumba and Pierre Kanduhia, the Democratic Republic of Congo, met at the border city of the Rwanda to evaluate strategic plans aimed at combating Ebola. The meeting was convened in response to the rapid spread of the Ebola virus in the eastern DRC city of Goma. The ministers also discussed how to prepare for future outbreaks of the virus. Protesters in Malawi have blocked roads with burning tires, calling on the chairperson of the Electoral Commission to resign. Protesters accuse the chairperson of helping rig the country's last election to keep Peter Mutharika as president. The disputed May ballot had sparked 4 previous protests and is being challenged in courts by opposition parties. Demonstrations have been taking place across the country, where streets, property, and cars have been also damaged.
Our message is the same, that Jane Ansah must resign. She messed up an election, and will continue to do demonstrations for as long as she doesn't step down. And any efforts to stop people from demonstrating are really against the constitutional rights of the people.
If this woman thinks rightly, she will realize that it's high time she resigned. All this is happening because she messed up the elections. We cannot, as a country, suffer because of just one person. The elections were messed up.
With this information, we make a second and very short break. You stay tuned with us. We are back with our news when we go to the United States, where gun control demonstrations have been taking place all across the country as a response to the latest wave of violence. Our correspondent in Washington, D.C., Jorge Gestoso, has the details for us in the following report. Welcome, Jorge. Please tell us.
Demonstrations here in Washington facing the Supreme Court requesting tougher laws regarding the control of guns, something that President Trump didn't address in his speech yesterday when he was mentioning the massacres in El Paso and Dayton, Ohio. Also, there is a lot of anger because he announced that he's going to visit El Paso in the day of tomorrow, and during his State of the Union address in February, he was basically criticizing deeply El Paso, saying that was one of the unsafest city in the country with the highest level of criminality, both things totally fake news. And therefore, two prominent people from El Paso, we're talking about Beto O'Rourke, candidate presidential from the Democratic Party, and also Congresswoman Veronica Escobar, are saying the visit tomorrow of Donald Trump to El Paso is not welcome.
Thank you, Jorge. And we continue in the United States because violent shootings continue to be registered in the country. A new shooting was reported in the city of Baton Rouge in the state of Louisiana. According to local media reports, one person was injured on Tuesday in a shooting at a Walmart after an altercation between two customers. The victims was a bystander who was hit multiple times by a gunfire. The injured man is reportedly in a stable condition with injuries that are not considered life-threatening. Meanwhile, social and human rights organizations gather in front of the United States Congress to demand an integral reform to laws governing the ownership and use of guns. The initiative marks the beginning of a series of events to pressure the Trump administration amend the current gun laws. The protests are in response to the recent mass shootings in the state of Texas and Ohio, which left more than 30 people dead and scores of others injured. And on Monday, President Donald Trump condemned white supremacy after a number of mass shootings over the weekend left dozens dead, as we were saying. He delivered this speech despite the fact that throughout his presidency, he has often supported white supremacist ideals and has called on his supporters to take actions against his detractors. Meanwhile, the government of Mexico has also expressed great concern about the terrorist attack against El Paso Latino community due to the fact that at least 8 of the victims were Mexican citizens. Let's find out more in the following story.
After mass shootings in Texas, Ohio, and Chicago during the weekend that killed over 30 people and left 50 injured, President Donald Trump saw himself forced to condemn the violence, as well as the white supremacist, racist hate that motivated one of the shooters.
The shooter in El Paso posted a manifesto online consumed by racist hate. In one voice, our nation must condemn racism, bigotry, and white supremacy. These sinister...
Trump added that he will ask the Justice Department to propose legislation which will ensure that those who commit mass murders and hate crimes face the death penalty. He also urged Congress to make tougher laws on the issue of gun control. Nonetheless, it should be noted that the National Rifle Association donated $30 million to Trump for his presidential campaign, as Republican politicians have long been in the pocket of the pro-gun lobby. As such, U.S. citizens have called on the president to find a solution to the issue.
If he comes to El Paso, our community is a loving, caring community, and we definitely will invite him to come in. I mean, it's a lot to deal with as just a person. I can only imagine how he feels as the president that he has to.
8 of the 22 people killed in El Paso were Mexican citizens. For this reason, Trump sent his condolences to the government of Mexico. The Mexican president, Andrés Manuel López Obrador, said his government will ask for the extradition of Patrick Crusius, the 21-year-old white supremacist who was behind the terrorist attack against El Paso's Latino community.
According to the Mexican law, this is a terrorist act. The National Public Prosecutor is formulating a research folder for the crime, and it will be the first investigation of this magnitude in Mexican history. It will investigate terrorism against our people inside the United States territory.
But the issue of gun violence in the U.S. is not limited to recent mass shootings. According to an organization that compiles statistics on gun violence, since the beginning of 2019, 255 mass shootings have been committed, resulting in at least 8,787 murders. However, during his speech, President Donald Trump preferred to blame video games and mental disorders for the violence.
Mental illness and hatred pulls the trigger, not the gun.
Saying that racist hate and mental disorders are the issue, not weapons themselves.
The perils of the internet and social media.
And now we move on from topic and from region because Iranian President Hassan Rouhani has labeled United States as a criminal state for using economic sanctions as a way of pressuring governments, and the Iranian president said that the Trump administration showed its true face by sanctioning Iran's officials and thus closing doors for possible talks. Rouhani added that Iran will only be willing to hold any negotiations if the United States lift all sanctions.
What can we do when the United States has sanctioned a foreign minister who is responsible for carrying out talks with the United States? It's obvious that the U.S. hasn't got any policy as they make different decisions every day. We have said it many times, but I will repeat again today that Iran favored talk with the U.S., but only if they lift all the sanctions because we cannot talk with a criminal. Today, the United States has a policy that qualifies that terrorism as economic terrorism.
And China announced on Monday that it will not rule out the possibility of laying additional tariffs on U.S. agricultural products purchased after Trump's sanctions. The announcement was made in defense of China's legitimate rights and interests in response to the additional 10% tariff that Washington said it would impose on $300 billion of goods imported from China starting next month. We stay in China because they have also said they will take the proper countermeasures if the United States deploys intermediate-range missiles in the Indo-Pacific region. The director of the Foreign Ministry Arms Control also warned neighboring countries not to allow the U.S. to deploy such weapons on their territory. And this was what happened among other topics in the Indochinese territory. Now we move on to India because the Jammu and Kashmir has entered in a second day of communications. A blackout on Monday, India cut off all major services to deter protests after it annulled the region's semi-autonomous status. A ban on public gatherings of more than 4 people is also being enforced as armed police patrol the city. Educational institutions as most shops in residential neighborhoods have also been closed. A curfew has been established while a number of regional leaders remain under house arrest.
At this time, my wife does not have medicines. I need to get medicine, but there are not medical facilities open. This keeps on happening, but there should be some facilities. If people are not well, where will they go?
At least they should have informed us if they wanted to implement any rules or regulations. At least they should have thought before. How could anyone arrange for necessities and commodities?
Meanwhile, in Palestine, demonstrators gathered at the Offer checkpoint to protest against Israeli goods imported to the West Bank. The protest is part of the global boycott, divestment, and sanction movements against Israel. This comes in response to the human rights abuse the Zionist state has committed against the Palestinian people.
Our message today is part of the boycott campaign of Israeli goods in response to Israel's occupation, persecution, and non-compliance with international agreements. We are working on 3 matters: Firstly, to convince Palestinian citizens not to buy Israeli products. Secondly, to work on improving national production. Thirdly, to convince Palestinian agents who import Israeli goods to stop doing so.
And like this, we come to the end of this news brief. Remember, you can follow us and find more information on our website, as you are seeing at LSRenglish.net, where you can read opinion articles, watch special interviews, and find updates about the Pan American Games being held in Peru, among other informations. And, of course, the latest interview offered by President Nicolás Maduro to the journalist Max Blumenthal. With the invitation for you to continue with us with Telesur to together build and unite our global thoughts. Until next time, thank you for watching.